friends. Today I'm very excited to share with you this very cute tutorial to make these bibs. These bibs are quite large. I would say they would easily fit up to 6-month baby, but it depends on the baby size, of course. Although these bibs are big, they are made in the 5x7 hoop. So today I'm going to show you how to do this. There's very little sewing needed to make these, but you will need a sewing machine to finish them off afterwards. Just to show you the size of these, I'll measure them quickly. From top to bottom, they're just over 12 inches. From left to right on the widest side, they're 9 inches. And then the neck opening when it's closed is around just over 4 inches. So your neck opening is, you could say, is 4 inches on the widest side. Of course, you can make a little extender if you want it a little bit bigger. It doesn't go a lot smaller when you close it up, but if you want to use it a little bit longer, maybe to 8 months or so, then you can make a little extender for yourself. So let's get started. Grab your cup of coffee and let's have fun. I will be making this bib on my Brother Innova's XV machine today, and I've taken out my 5x7 hoop, so you will also need your 5x7 hoop then. You will need a cutaway stabilizer, and the stabilizer I'm going to use today is quite a sturdy stabilizer, as you can see. It's not a very thin one, as I like my bibs to have a nice shape. If you however like your bib to be softer, by all means you can use a thinner cutaway stabilizer. I do not recommend tear away for these bibs, as you will wash them often, and tear away have the tendency to dissolve between the layers and make little lumps. So you want to avoid that as far as possible. So definitely I would suggest cutaway. You will then of course need batting. Batting is totally optional. If you like the quilted effect, like you can see here on the bib, behind the little elephant, I've got that quilted shape that you can really see nicely when you've got batting underneath the fabric. There you can see the lovely quilt effect the batting will give you, as I've got it here behind cotton fabric, and when I move the bib you'll see I've used satin fabric on the top. With the batting underneath, it gives a lovely loft to your quilting design. So batting if you want that quilted effect. If not, by all means you can leave out the batting. It's totally your choice. The batting I'm going to use is a thin quilted batting. It's the thinnest that is available in this country. You can see it's more or less, I would say, 3 mil, 4 mils thick. So it's very thin, soft batting. You will also need 2 pieces of fabric. Now these are really not big pieces. The whole bib uses small pieces of fabric. And the fabric that I chose here is the stripes on the sides of the bib. So you're going to need a piece for that side and a piece for this side. This is just a polycotton that I've chosen for those pieces. You will then need a piece of white fabric for your center. I've chosen a cotton fabric for that, 100% cotton. And you're also going to need, for your shadow effect, a piece of fabric that actually shines through quite a bit. You can see if I place this fabric on top, this is a very thin, almost organza type fabric. I'm not quite sure what the name is though, but it's very thin. And you can see when I place it on the ellie shines through nicely, but it hides the actual stitches and it makes it soft to the touch for baby skin. What is shadow embroidery? Shadow embroidery is just where you actually hide, so your design is not as, how can I say, as visible. It's almost as if it's just got a shadow of a hint of a design. So you can see, if I bring this closer up to the screen for you, you can see the fabric is covering most of the stitches except for the outline. Then we're going to use white fabric that I've chosen for the sides. Again, I'm just going to use normal cotton. for both sides. So I have a piece for that side and I've got a piece for that side as well. And then of course we need for our pretty little bow, you can either use the same fabric for both sides and something else for the center, or you can use the same for your center dot. So you're going to need 3 pieces. It's one for the left, the right, and then for the center. And then last but not least, we've got our backing fabric. Now, like you can see the back, I've got a toweling fabric here, but it's a special kind of waterproof toweling. It's got plastic on the back. It's normally used for baby bibs and for waterproofs or the nappies the people these days make for babies. It's got a waterproof side, and then on the other side it's got a very soft toweling. You can ask at your local fabric store for it. If you can't find the specific one and still want a waterproof bib, of course you can just underneath your toweling, you can just add a layer of plastic as well. It will have the same effect. So let's get started in making. You have all your supplies, you got your thread, all your fabrics, your stabilizers that you need. Oh, of course you need your snaps for closing your bib and your snap tool. You can add lace if you want, it's totally optional. If you want to add lace, you need 2 pieces, one for the one side and one for the other side. That is optional. You don't need to add lace if you do not want to. As you can see in this bib, I didn't add any lace at all. So that is just personal preference if you want to or not. Let's get started now that we have all our supplies ready on making these gorgeous bibs in the 5x7 hoop. Place your 5x7 hoop in your machine. And you're now going to select the first design that will be your bottom shape. So if you look onto your screen, I'm going to select that design. You can see that's the left hand side of the bottom. And this specific design only have 2 colors. It's got a placement line and a tack down line. So we're first going to go ahead and stitch the first step. That will be your outline. I'm now going to remove the hoop from the machine, and we're now going to add our layers of fabric on top. I recommend using 505 spray between your layers just to keep it in place and anything from shifting. So I'm just going to lightly spray 505 spray, and then I'm going to add 1 layer of batting and 1 layer of my blue fabric. So I'm going to spray lightly again and add my blue fabric on top. I'm now going to take it back to the embroidery machine to finish off this first step. Your first panel is all done. Quick and easy, you can remove it from the hoop, and I'll show you how to get it ready. I'll move this closer for you in that area, and it's going to meet other fabric on that side. So we just want to trim the extra fabric there and there. You don't need to trim the fabric on this edge. We will use that as our seam allowance for finishing the bib. So I'm just going to take my scissors and lift my batting and my fabric. And I'm going to cut as close to the stitches as I can. And I'm just removing that part of fabric. I'm now going to remove it from the hoop. And I'm going to cut away my cutaway stabilizer at the same area. And you can place your first panel separate for later use. You're now going to hoop another piece of stabilizer, and we're going to do our second area. Okay, I've just hooped stabilizer again. We now need to do the other side, and it's done in the exact same way as the first part, so it will just be the mirrored side, the right hand side of your bib you're going to do now. I've now finished stitching both sides of the bottom, and we're now ready to do the center part of the bib that has the picture on top. So you can hoop another layer of cutaway stabilizer and then bring up your center design. And we're going to do the first step, which will just be an outline directly onto the stabilizer. You can open the next design, which is your center design, on your machine. I'm going to use this future little racer that's also included in your files with the little car on. And we're going to stitch the first step that is just an outline. After your outline stitched onto your stabilizer, you can remove your hook from the machine. And we're now going to place the two pieces you've done in the beginning so that they will join in the hoop when we start stitching now again. Now I am using 505 spray, and I'm just spraying on the edge where I want the next shape to meet the back of my embroidery, not on the front. And then I'm just overlapping the lines, your zigzag that stitched previously, and the line that the guideline that just stitched. So the next stitch, when it tacks down, it will catch right on that edge. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Just a little bit of 505 spray, and then I'm going to place my panel so that it just overlaps that line that just stitched. The 505 spray should hold enough that you don't need anything else, but if you feel you need something else to add, you can add sticky tape, but try and use the water soluble tape so that you can wash it away afterwards, because we're going to place fabric now and you won't be able to remove it. So rather use the 505 spray in this case. Immediately now I'm going to add my batting. So I'm going to add 505 spray, then I'm going to add my one layer of batting, and I'm also going to add my center piece of fabric that I want to use. So just some 505 again, and I'm going to place my white fabric on top. You can now place it back in the machine, and the tack down stitch will stitch, and then we will trim away the extra fabric. You can now go ahead and stitch the next step, which will be your tack down step, to tack down your fabric and your batting in place. You can now remove your hook from the machine. And we're now going to trim the extra fabric. You're going to trim only your top white fabric and your batting. So be careful not to cut the fabric at the bottom, your previous panels that you finished. Try and trim as close to this zigzag stitches as you possibly can without cutting them, of course. Again, I'm going to lift on the side to make sure that I don't cut my bottom panel. At the bottom I'm just cutting straight down, and you can shorten that if you want to, so that you leave a seam allowance for later on. So you can already see the bottom of your bib shaping with your bottom two pieces that is in place and your center fabric. So we're now ready to stitch the picture on top and to show you how to make the shadow effect. After you finish stitching the design, just before you'll see the next step will be another outline. We're ready to add our see-through fabric on top. So you're going to overlay this thin see-through fabric I told you about in the beginning. If you do not want the shadow effect, of course you can just skip the next the steps, or just continue with the design until after the outline is done. But if you like the shadow effect, now again, just to recap, the shadow effect is where you don't feel the stitches on top, but you just see the color slightly, almost like a water painting, the color slightly coming through the fabric. Place your see-through fabric over your design, and you can continue stitching the next step, and then we'll trim away the extra fabric, and then I'll show you the next step from there. You're now going to remove the hoop from the machine, but do not remove the fabric from the hoop yet. And you can now trim just on the sides as close to the stitches as possible. And I'm going to do the same on this side. You will notice that I'm not cutting as close as I normally do, because I don't want it to pull out as the zigzag stitch I have not finished yet. That is because I want to add my lace pieces on top now. So with the next step with the zigzag it will tack down my lace pieces as well. I'm going to place my lace pieces, and I'm using some 505 spray. I'm just spraying it onto the batting, just lightly on the wrong side of the lace. And then I'm going to place the lace right on the edge where I want it to be. And I'm going to do the same with the one on the other side. I'm now going to take it back to the machine for the zigzag stitch to tack down the lace pieces. Trim the raw edges of the lace. So I'm now only trimming the lace, the raw edge on the lace. I'm now taking it back to the embroidery machine where we will do the quilt effect, and then you will do the outlines on your design. After the center panel is finished stitching, you can remove the hoop from the machine. And just to recap, after you placed your see-through fabric, you went ahead and you stitched all the background quilting, and then all the outlines finished up, and you can see the beautiful soft coloring the stitches underneath the see-through fabric creates. After that all finished, the edges, the finishing off of where the two pieces join was stitched, and we're now ready to remove it from the hoop. After you remove from the hoop, you can trim away where the next piece of fabric will meet. So this is the bottom of your bib. This is this whole bottom section. We're now going to do that side, and then we're going to do this side. So we need to trim away the fabric on the scalloped edge at the top. So you can just take your scissors and just carefully, not to cut the stitches, but as close to the stitches as possible. At this stage on the back, you can also remove some of these extra additional layers of stabilizer, just to remove some of the bulk. And this you can put separate now until needed. Hoop your stabilizer again, and you're going to go ahead and stitch the first step, the left top panel. So the left top panel is going to stitch now, so you're going to stitch that outline directly onto your stabilizer. You can load your design onto the machine and then stitch the first step directly onto the stabilizer. remove the hoop from the machine, and I'll show you how to place the next section. We now need to place this bottom piece that we finished stitching previously in the correct spot. And again, like we did previously, I just spray fiber fast spray on the back where that piece needs to be tacked down. And then just match up your corners with the corners over here, and remember that the zigzag should slightly overlap the edge that you just stitched. After you placed it firmly down, you can now go ahead and add your batting and your fabric, same as we did before. So I'm going to lightly spray my batting, place that on top over the whole area, and then I'm going to take my white fabric, because I'm going to use white in that area, and add my white fabric on top. I'm now taking it back to the embroidery machine, where the next step will be a zigzag tack down step to tack down the bottom to the top and to tack down my batting and my fabric all at once. After this tack down step is done, you can go straight ahead and stitch the next step, which will be the outline for the half part of the bow. Remove the hoop from the machine. This is the area we're going to cover with fabric now, so we're going to finish our little bow now. So I have my square piece of red style fabric, lightly spray with fiber 5 and place it down where I want it. You can now take it back to the machine to tack down that piece of fabric. So this is normal applique steps. The zigzag of the bow just completed, so we're ready to trim away the extra fabric. At this stage you can also go ahead and where the two, your bottom and your top meet, you can also trim away that extra fabric. Just be careful not to cut the bottom panel that you already done previously. So you can see I've just trimmed the fabric that where the two pieces meet. If you look at the finished bib, it's where these two pieces meet. So just the extra fabric that was left over from this, I just trimmed away. You can already see your bib taking shape very nicely at this point. You can now take it back to the embroidery machine where the quilting will be done next. The next step will be the satin to finish off the raw edge of the applique and where the two pieces meet, and then there will be a decorative stitch on top of that. So you can just at this stage finish the rest of this panel, and then we will do the other side. After all the stitching is finished, you can remove it from the machine, and you can now remove it from the hoop as well. Almost done, just one final hooping to do. Now again, like we did previously, you're going to trim where the next area will need to line up. So I'm just going to trim away a little bit of this just so it doesn't get in my way for now. Don't worry too much about trimming inside, we'll do that later on. I'm now going to trim inside the circle here. And again, to make bulk easier, I will just remove the stabilizer from the back. What I mean by bulk is the layers and layers and layers of, because we do multiple hooping, you each time have layers that you add so that your bib doesn't become too thick. So where possible, I try to remove overlaying layers from the back to minimize that effect. We're now ready to do the last section of our bib. So you can go ahead and hoop stabilizer again. And for your last piece, this is this section on that side. It's very similar to that one, although we will have an extra applique step, but I will show you as we go on. So again, you're going to hoop, stitch your first outline, and then I'll show you how to place the final piece of your bib. After your first step, which is just the outline finished on your stabilizer, you can remove the hoop from the machine. And we're now going to place the bib pieces that you've already done. Again, turn wrong side facing you. Spray on this area where the next piece needs to meet. You're going to spray lightly with 505 spray. And then line up your corners and the ball of the middle of your bow. You're just going to line it up. Again, the zigzag need to just overlay the rest of your design. After you placed your panels that you previously done on top, and remember to use your 505 spray to make sure that it doesn't move, you can now go ahead and add your batting and your fabric for that side. I'm going to spray my 505 spray lightly onto my batting, place that down, and then I'm going to add my white fabric on top. I'll just add a little bit more 505 on this, and you're now ready to stitch the next step, which will be your zigzag outline step to tack down the fabric and to tack down the rest of your bib to that new section we're going to do now. And we're now going to place the fabric for the right hand side of the bow. A little bit of 505. Add your fabric, and now you can go back to the machine to do the zigzag stitch to outline, to tack down your fabric in place for the right hand side of the bow then. And trim the extra fabric around your bow shape. Careful not to cut your white fabric underneath. You can also go ahead and trim the bottom area where the two pieces of fabric, your bottom half and your top half of your bib meet. Again, just be careful not to cut the stitches or the fabric at the bottom. So I'm just trimming the batting and the white fabric away at the bottom of my bib. You can already see what your bib will look like at this point. We're now going to put it back in the machine, and we're now going to do the applique steps on this circle. So your first one will just be an outline. Then you'll go and place your fabric that you want in the center. A tack down stitch will cut around, and then we will continue with the rest of the design. As it's a small piece, I'm just going to add this under the machine. You can add a little bit of 505 spray if you're worried it will move. Cut around that little circle the extra fabric away. I did the circle as a separate applique so that you can add a different color in there. You can see on this bib I used the same stripes in the middle. With this one I just use a plain red center that I want. So it just gives you a little bit more flexibility, but you can add just one color. And we're now going to take it back to the machine, and the quilting will now be done next. After the quilting is done, you can now do the satin stitches and the decorative stitches on top. And then we finish with the front, and I'll show you how to assemble your baby bib and how to insert the studs. After the embroidery is done, you can remove the hoop from the machine. All the embroidery is now completed and your front panel is all finished. You can remove it from the hoop. And now we need to do a little bit of sewing, not too much, just to join the back and the front together. First of all, I'm going to trim away all these loose stabilizers and extra fabric. I'm going to trim around the bib about a 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. We're going to join the two pieces just towards the inside of the zigzag, so you can trim quite close to the zigzag if you want. It just makes turning it inside out a lot easier. Just removing this extra stabilizer on this side, and I'm just cutting along the outside around the whole bib. I'm now going to use my front panel as my template as well. Place your front of your bib that you finished on your back fabric, and you're now going to trace all around the shape so that we have a cut line to cut the back fabric.
Okay.
The line I drew is very faint as it's a wash away pen, but yeah, just cut along the line that you drew on the outside. At the bottom I'm just going to leave a tail which I can fold inwards when we turn it inside out for easier stitching down. You're then going to take your front panel, place it the right side facing you, and then with your back fabric, the right side facing the bib. So you have right sides facing together. Place it on top, and you can use wonder clips or pins to just pin it around. And you're then going to stitch an 1/8 of an inch all around, or if you go to on this side, you can stitch from that side, and just towards the inside of the zigzag stitch you can stitch the back fabric in place. You're going to leave open the bottom area, so you're only going to stitch from there all around to that side, leaving this open so that we have an area to turn the bib inside out. Okay, so I'm going to turn my bib, and if you look at from the front, the zigzag line over there, you're just going to stitch on the inside of the zigzag the two pieces together. Remember to leave open the bottom so we have a space to turn inside out. So I'm going to go over to my normal sewing machine and I'll stitch that in place quickly. I'm using a stitch length a little bit longer than normal. Your normal stitch length is 2.5. I'm going to take it up to a 3.5 just because I've got a few layers together. It just makes it easier stitching together. Because I used 505 spray on the stabilizer, the feet of the machine, it tends to stick. If that does happen, just take a little bit of baby powder, not a lot, and just rub it in the areas that you feel is a little bit tacky. It just absorbs the glue and make everything slide. Just a tip, if you go around these tight corners, try and do it in one motion, even if you slow down quite a bit, instead of stopping and starting, to ensure that you have one smooth curve. So rather go slow, but keep on stitching all the time. Okay, we now need to turn the bib inside out, so just push your finger in, and we're going to start turning the points in, and then we'll pull the whole bib through the hole. So I'm just pushing my thumb in as far as I can go, pinching it and just pushing in that corner. I'll just push in with my finger as far as I can go, and I just used like a sushi stick, a wooden stick, to push it in so that I can pull it from the inside. So as long as you can grab hold of it from the inside, you can just pull it through. I'm not pulling it all the way through because I first want to do that one as well. And then I can pull both of them through the opening, turning the whole bib inside out. You can now take your stick and just go into those corners and just push out the seams. And you can now take it to the iron and just give it a good iron. And you can roll over the seams so the seams are nice and neat. And after we've ironed it, we're going to tuck in the bottom flaps that we left, fold over your front, and then with your sewing machine or by hand, whichever method you like to do, you're just going to top stitch that bottom section over. You can go all around as well if you want that finish. I did it on one of the other herbs, or bibs rather. On this bib you can see I went all around. On this one I didn't. So it really depends on what you want to do. So that's just to close that bottom area which we left open to turn inside out. I'll go and iron mine quickly, and then we'll add the stuff. A little bib is done, and I think it came out very cute. Perfect for a little boy. I love the shadow effect on the embroidery as well. We're now ready to add the snaps. You get two kinds of tools for the snap machine. You get the handheld tool, which looks similar like this one. It depends on the make. These are by Cam Snaps. This is the tabletop model. It's quite heavy, but I really love working with the tabletop model. I'm going to insert the other side. I've already made the hole. So I've inserted my front with the pin, which you can see there, it's sticking out. And I now need to put in my other die because the bottom is different than this side. So I'm just putting the other die. And they just screw on, like you can see. And then I'm taking the part with the little column standing up, and the column side goes up. You'll see it can only fit in one way, and it will stay in there when you place it in. I'm now going to take my bib with the little pin in and place it in the indentation, and then I'm just going to firmly press down onto the tool. And there your snap is in place, and your bib can now close. Oh. Many of you asked how to make a little extender if you want your neck opening to be a little bit bigger, or as baby grows that you don't need to snap it there for closing, but that you perhaps have a little piece of fabric in there. Now you can make a little band with fabric, doing it with sewing, where you will stitch two pieces of fabric together, turn inside out to form a little band like this, or you can just use a simple piece of ribbon. It's really easy to do. So just cut a piece of ribbon a little bit longer than what you want, because we're going to fold the ends. So I'm just going to fold the end in, and I'm going to fold it again. You've inserted your snap now through the folded end of your ribbon, and I'm going to add the other side of my snap in my machine, and I'm just going to attach a little snap piece to this end. And half of my extender is already done. We're now going to need to do this side, so again you'll fold your end and fold it again, so we have no raw edges. And again you're going to make a hole. This time the pin side is going to go from the bottom in. And we need to change the die for the other side. And I'm going to push my other piece inside and add my snap to this side. And very easily you have created a little extender strap, which can be removed if not needed, or just want it direct like that, or you can add your little extender piece. As baby grows, you can make longer and longer pieces so the neck opening opens up. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, everybody, and that you will be making beautiful bibs in your very small 5x7 hoops. I know I've enjoyed this tutorial tremendously, and I hope to see you all soon for another exciting video in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye for now.